Call to order the meeting of the North Andover School Committee. Today is January 14th, and we'll start by rising and for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. So just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and please, if you would please silence your mobile devices, that would be great. We're going to start this evening with our public comment. This is for anyone who has anything to bring to the school committee business or on the agenda topics. So public comment we'll start with. Seeing none, I'd like to move to our student report. How you doing, Matt?
Not too bad, thank you. Everyone doing well? Good. So, right in the middle of our second trimester at the high school. So this is the point where historically you'll see students start to slide by a little bit, but this is the key point. This is the key point that everyone's keeping in the back of their head, and though it's the dog days of winter, you gotta power through. And for most people, this is one of their most important times, especially for the juniors, how they only have 2 more trimesters left to really get their GPA up for college. So huge time in the classroom. About a week ago at the high school, a numerous amount of students partook in DECA, which is a huge business expedition that they do. It's with people all throughout the country. They do they're given like a role to do, and they're supposed to give that pitch to a judge, and it's all throughout business and everything. And we at North Andover, we had 65 students move on to states, so that's great to see.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the last year we had, I believe it was 10 or 11 students make it all the way to nationals.
Yep.
So they went all the way down to Disney World for that. So it's great to see a lot of people get involved in that. And and the hockey team, they start off slow, but they've just won their 4th straight game. So as of now, they're looking to get into the postseason somehow. Basketball, the boys basketball team is starting to get back on track. They just won against Drake this past Tuesday, and tomorrow they have a big game against Andover at 7 o'clock. So it's a big thing. Also, you can still sign up for Relay for Life, which is a overnight cancer fundraiser overnight at the high school, where you just walk around the track, partake in games and activities, and just fundraise for the American Cancer Society.
And anyone at home, I'll retweet that information. So it'll be on
Great.
the website.
February
26th and 27th. And also for the younger kids of North Andover, there's all the programs that are being run through the youth center. Registration forms are going out very soon for that, so be in touch for the summer programs and everything about that.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to see you.
As always with you guys.
Thanks for the update. Great. So moving on, we have our consent agenda. This is the approval of regular session meeting minutes. So I'd entertain a motion to, well, actually, do you want to take these one at a time, or do we want to take these separately? All right, so
Take them one at a time,
okay, that's fair. So entertain a motion to accept December 17 as presented.
So, second.
Great. So discussion. Any comments, questions, or corrections? As always, Bev does a wonderful job. Hearing nothing, all in favor of accepting minutes as presented for our meeting from December 17th, say aye. Aye. All opposed? One abstention, Mr. Teresi, thank you. Entertain a motion of accepting the minutes from our meeting January 7th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so discussion. Again, any questions or extensions? Nope, hearing none. All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as presented for January 7th, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstained? 5-0. Thank you. Next item on our agenda this evening is the chair report, and I'll be brief because I know we have another wonderful presentation. The only item on my report was apologies for losing the feed during the budget session. That was a very unique, very insightful, and very informative meeting, and a few of the members of the committee actually drove down to attend in person because it was so compelling. So just a reminder, if you are interested in watching that meeting, it is available on Xfinity 99 and Verizon 22. Look for the repeat sessions, although right now there's nothing scheduled. So if you do want to see it on demand, that is available from the North Andover CAM website, which is northandovercam.edu, I believe.
It's also on our website.
.org, excuse me, thank
It's also on
you.
the North Andover Public Schools website.
Exactly. So if you go onto the CAM website, look for meeting or recording number 9861, or click on January 7th, and on the right side you'll see a link to stream. So apologies, and hopefully we'll not have those problems in the future. That's it for me. Should we move on to the superintendent's report?
Sure. Mr. Mealy is going to start. Jim?
Our Director of Food Services, Erica Murphy, asked me to let you know and the public that Monday they started, they set up breakfast kiosks at each end of this high school. Erica is aware that, no surprise to us, that high school students don't always eat breakfast. They don't leave enough time to get there and eat as well. So she set those up so that when they get there and they realize they're hungry, they'll have the opportunity to have some breakfast. So that started on Monday, and she'll let us know how it goes.
Great.
And my report is just I did two pretty exciting things today, and I thought I'd share with the committee. The first is this morning at the nice early hour of 7 a.m. We had a meeting today with a guy by the name of Dr. Bill Meehan, who is actually the person who, if you know, concussions are a big deal right now. He's part of the McKaylee Center, which is actually the center that received the money from the NFL Players Association to do the extensive concussion research. He's very interested in doing a youth sports injury study that would parallel the Framingham Heart Study, where you would take a group of kids and track both athletes and non-athletes over time, multi-year, as you know, the Framingham Heart Study has informed so much of what we do in our country now around cholesterol and food and exercise. The idea is, could we take a group of kids and track them longitudinally and really look at their participation in athletic, their participation in band, what they do, and then also what their injuries are, so that we would have some real data. It was a really fun meeting. Gilly was there, so I'll let you jump in when I'm done. Rick Gorman was there as part of the Youth Center. Cheryl Barzak was there for representing the nurses. Scott Young was there representing athletics, along with our athletic trainer. And then Liz Kahn, who's actually the Director of Development currently for the Concussion Legacy Foundation, who's a parent of a student at the high school who is just became an All-American in field hockey. So we had a great meeting. Bill Meehan was also accompanied by Cynthia Fisher-Cook, who has worked with him and supported him. She is the wife of Jim Cook, the owner of Sam Adams. So they were here this morning, but also, frankly, I tell you, does many things in her own right, not just being the wife. She's done some stem cell research and cord blood work. So they're looking for a site and a town to partner with. At the end of the meeting, they are very, very, very interested in partnering with North Andover. The idea here is actually that in terms of the study, they're looking to kind of invest about $5 million into this study. So it would be a significant investment in our students' health and tracking. So it was a really exciting meeting. We were all on board. We were all really excited about the possibilities. What I'm suggesting, so that we don't talk too much about it, is in an upcoming meeting to get Dr. Meehan here to be able to talk to all of you so you could understand the study. Then also to have him go in front of the Board of Selectmen so that people really understand, because it's a town-wide thing. It's not just a North Andover Public Schools thing. So it was very exciting. Gilly?
I mean, it was awesome. I think what really spelled it out the best is they'd be following these kids for their entire lifetime, over time. And what Dr. Meehan was saying that really resonated with me as a parent of two young children is, you know, it arms the parents with information over time. Do I let my kid play soccer or do I not? You know, sometimes we have these anecdotal things, well, you know, this person played football, now they're getting steroid injections in their back. But what's that rate compared to the non-athlete in someone just in their 40s? So it was really compelling. It's the best of the best in the country. So he's tied in with Children's Hospital, Harvard University, and then the McKaylee Foundation, which is just remarkable. And I think, as Dr. Price said, I mean, that's the group that brought in over $100 million for that NFL study. And this would be something that would really put North Andover on the map in terms of really doing, providing information that would probably be used across the entire nation over time.
And obviously, there's many steps, IRB, all of that, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew about it. It's pretty exciting. Obviously, there'll be no cost to the North Andover Public Schools other than, I think there'd be huge benefits.
That's very exciting.
Excited about it.
Very
Have
exciting.
we actually been selected already, or?
If we want to do it, we're in.
How did they select us, or how did they approach
Through
us?
some connections that I have.
Thank you very much.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So I think it would be fun, and I think it would be, and I think it would, you know, if you think about the Framingham corollary, I mean, people know about Framingham, Massachusetts from that study.
Sure.
And the value that it brought to that community is huge.
How long and how many students?
So they're looking at a total of about 5,000 students, and they're looking at probably a study that will be completed once I am long gone from this earth.
Yeah, it's a longitudinal.
So you'll be gone too, actually.
I didn't want to say that you, so that's why I said I.
Like I'll be waiting for her, but that's probably not.
But one of the
We'll give you
things that
advanced
happens
copies
in
then.
one of these things that happens in these longitudinal studies is that you have early results that you can impact. So, but that's the idea. I mean, it's a massive. It would be start this study. There's actually some funding already available. Then you'll be applying to NIH and other organizations for significant amount of money. So it would be really interesting. So I'll have Dr. Meehan would love to come speak to you. He's incredible.
Do you have a feel for when they were looking for an answer?
So I think what we'd like to do is go in front of all the different groups and get people's take. Our goal would be, if we could, to start with maybe a grade in September.
Okay. So we're talking, we probably need to start that process with.
Yeah,
the
so
rest of
I
town.
will talk about when to put him on the agenda.
Yeah, maybe
He's
after budget.
very, very busy, so we'll
Yeah.
try to also get him here.
Okay.
So
Excellent.
anyways, that was an exciting meeting. We all left stoked and excited.
And when he said that that's his top priority and he'd move things around to come up to North Andover, I mean, it was pretty cool.
And his basic comment was, if you guys want to do this, then I'm done looking for a community. I'd like to work here. There's a lot of reasons why this is a great community to do that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, right after that meeting, I had the privilege of going, meeting with the Commissioner of Education, Mitchell Chester, to talk about district-determined measures and the link of assessment data to teacher evaluation and student impact. A small number of superintendents, 8, I think, superintendents and assistant superintendents were invited by the DEAS to come and discuss this with Tom Scott, the head of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, along with the DEAS staff, the commissioner, and then Heather Pesky, who's really working hard on this. So it was a fun opportunity for me to be able to be in the room with just about 15 of us to talk about the impact. So they've created a working group. And they invited me to be on it. So it was really interesting and exciting to see. This is a very controversial issue. And I think that the superintendent's representative, working collaboratively with the commissioner, are hoping to be able to find a way out of this controversy that would be able to support teaching and learning, and also allow this to happen in a way with more broad-based support. So it was a great meeting. It was a 2-hour meeting, and it was a wonderful opportunity for the North Andover Public Schools to be at the table.
Great.
Aren't there really sort of two issues, though, DDM and the evaluation?
No, so so just to be clear, the evaluation component with the 4 standards is one. DDM is part of the evaluation of student impact. So when you think about evaluation, it's the observation component, and then what is now getting into law is that teachers are going to have a student impact rating, and that is very controversial in the state. And so a small number of people have been asked to help think about how to do that.
Yep.
And I have absolutely no idea how I got asked. but they asked, so I went. No, that wasn't connections. I don't know, all of a sudden I got the email and I said to Gilly, should I go? And he said, you'd be crazy not to, so I listened to Gilly.
There you go. It sounds like a very exciting opportunity as well to be part of that process.
Yeah, it should be fun. I don't know where we'll end up. So that was my day.
Great.
Couldn't have had anything to do with your renter, could it?
I don't think so. Who knows? I ended, who knows?
See, the Twitter feed gets more followers.
Right, exactly.
Great. All set?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to our old business. We have 2 items. The first is our continued discussion of the superintendent recommended budget.
Great. So what we thought we would do is you guys had highlighted a number of questions. And what I thought I would do is try to answer those questions. And I've brought some folks here with us. So do you guys mind coming to the table just so that you're joining the table? Those of you who are presenting, you have to bring an extra chair or 2.
Great, thank you.
But a few, just so that we can kind of have a discussion. I'm going to start. Andrew, you had asked about the process. So Jim, I will click. The first is, you had asked about how we had gotten to this budget, and in kind of Cliff Note fashion. We started with the entry results. So as you know, we really categorized those 4 into 4 categories. And we did 2 vision processes, where the first was central office. That would be Leanne, myself, Jim, Gilly, and Mike. Actually went over, Rick Gorman hosted us for a morning over at the youth center, and we spent about 4 hours, guys, really trying to say, what is our vision for this district in the next couple of years? And we categorized that into year 0, which is this year, year 1, 2, and 3, into those 4 categories in terms that we had identified. So specifically, all kids, specifically resources, and also in terms of consistent curriculum, and then district structures. So we looked at those 4 quadrants, and we looked over time. It was a really good exercise for us to go through to kind of think about what is possible, and also to think over time rather than just a year. We then did the exact same process with the entire leadership team, the full leadership team, and we asked folks to kind of get in elementary and secondary groups and really go at that exact same experience. And then we took all of that data, and we gave it back to folks so they could see that. And in the second part, we actually analyzed the data. So the data from the visioning process, class size data. We did some very extensive class size data, which included enrollment projections and MCAS. And we started to kind of really come up with ideas around what would make sense for our budget moving forward. That information was given to the central office team. We prioritized those, and then went through a series of meetings with the principals around what we were suggesting, where we really flushed out a number of the ideas. We added some things, we took away some things, and then we finalized our budget over a series of meetings where everyone kind of agreed to the budget presentation and the idea. The thing I would say is I tried to think about this in a linear fashion. Kind of the theme throughout all of this was Jim and I working very collaboratively with the town. So every step of the way, we were keeping the town in mind, talking to them about what we were thinking, putting our budget proposals forward. So when we came up with kind of the draft list, I shared that very early on with Andrew Mailer just to make sure that this was within the realm of possibility. We got pretty creative. And then once we had basically decided what we were going to do, we collaboratively, in some cases, reached out to anyone who was going to be impacted by the budget. I felt very strongly that they should not hear about something impacting their jobs through a budget presentation. So, for instance, I met with the librarians to talk about the library media specialists. They helped me craft the language around that. We met with the FCIs and the union to talk about how that was going to look. So we tried to, once we had our ideas, to make sure that we got the teachers, especially the impacted teachers, involved in the process. Okay?
Great.
Thank you.
So the next thing I wanted to do before we move into Jim talking about the all-in budget is someone had asked, I can't remember whom, maybe it was you, Stan, to look at this over many years. So I actually gave you a sheet. And so you're looking at the 24 communities that we compare ourselves to and the per pupil spending over time. I gave that for you to put in your budget book. It's also in the PowerPoint. So if you look at North Andover in FY10, just so we understand what we're looking at, we spent $11,277 per pupil. And we'll talk about how you can compare apples to apples here. But in FY14, that number was up to $11,889. The reason we use FY14 is that's the information that is now available through the state as we had done our end of year report that gets audited. We won't have FY15 for a few more months. And so we did that for every one of the communities, and some things that I would like to draw everyone's attention to. So in FY10, out of the 24 districts we are comparing ourselves, we were the 7th lowest spending district. Over time, we went from the 7th to the 3rd lowest spending district. And that's a result of the fact that if you look in terms of the dollar change per student, we had the lowest dollar change per student over that time. If you look at the percentage change, 5.43, that's actually the 3rd lowest percentage change over time. Why is that? Because we had the lowest dollar change, but that would be the numerator, but our denominator was a lot smaller to begin with than those that had a smaller lower change, which was Natick and Newburyport, where their denominator was higher. So even though they spent more, they actually added additional money. As a percentage, it was not as high. And the thing I was also thinking about is, we often think of the 2 districts that spend less than us. So Franklin, you can see that Franklin, over that period of time, increased their budget by 15%. So I think if I was a betting woman, I would say that they'll probably surpass us for FY15. And then if you look at Reading, you will see that they increased their budget by 9.8% over that same period of time. And so, I again think that we're 9.8% below the average. 15.2% was the average increase of those 24 communities, and we were at 5.4. I think this is just another way to look at what we've been talking about in terms of our per pupil expenditure, and it also demonstrates to us that although we have been increasing our spending, we have been doing so at a rate that is not closing the gap.
So our student population has also been fluctuating across this time. So are the other districts seeing comparable change?
So for instance, I haven't looked at all of them, but I was doing some analysis with Dr. Scazzarella with Tewksbury, so we can talk a little bit about that. And Tewksbury's population has been decreasing. So when they may not have been increasing their budget overall, but we have not had the benefit, and I don't mean that's a benefit at all, but that has not impacted us. So the challenge just becomes if our student population is staying the same or increasing a little bit.
So that's a solution. We just get less students. So we got rid of 1,000 students. Fix that problem in a heartbeat.
So that's not going to be my approach, Mr. Lippert.
But not a recommended approach.
I wouldn't recommend that approach.
That's a whole other approach.
But there's no doubt that student populations do fluctuate. Ours hasn't been dramatic, I don't believe. But we haven't had a dramatic move either way. But I just think it's important to, and you look at these, you look at Burlington. They've had a massive increase. Well, that's the result of massive increases in commercial, right? So, it's just something to think about over time. So I think this is a good look. And just yet another way to look at kind of the same story that we've been talking about for a bunch of time now.
Yeah. So I think the budget proposal that you have with regards to the reserve teacher is going to be helpful in that matter. But I don't disagree that we're lean. We're getting decent results for being so lean. But to move the needle is going to take, I think, a lot of collaboration, a lot of socialization. So thank you for bringing this forward. But I don't see anything immediately that we can do other than continue to look for those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, there's not an easy solution.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, it's not that it got this way in a moment. So
no, that's true.
If we're going to get out of it, I think it'll take some time too.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to find out what there's some significant challenges for other communities.
Yep.
What did they do? I mean, obviously Tewksbury lost population,
Yep.
and that's where they're number one up, but, who did overrides in their communities to bump their number up? That's something that I think would be important to know as well.
We could absolutely get that information if over these 5 years, has anyone done that?
I mean, when you look at Boxford, I mean, almost 30%, I mean, it's just staggering.
Yes. You do have to remember that their school population is small because we're
Yeah.
only looking,
Right,
so,
Two
so.
elementary schools.
It's like 600 or...
So the one thing that we could do is we could do enrollment and we could do override.
If you want to buy a ranch for $900,000, go to Boxford.
2 acres.
Because,
So, you okay? All right.
Good, thank you.
Just, again, so the next thing is, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, is you had asked some questions about kind of the all-in budget. So Jim's going to walk us through that. Do you want me to click for you?
I'll do it.
All right.
I did this actually for the FinCom last year as a way to explain our budget. 'Cause we get questions all the time about, okay, it's $44 million is your budget, but what's the real number, total amount spent on students in North Andover? So I did this, and I thought it'd be good to present that to you as well. The different resources that we have the general fund, revolving accounts, grants, circuit breaker, indirect expenses, and then what we call consolidated departments, the shared expenses, IT and facilities. So the general fund is our annual operating expenses, and the big categories there are salaries, contracted services, and supplies. It's funded through the local taxes. It's governed by federal and state regulations and state procurement laws. And the benefit that we have is that we get a bottom line budget approved at town meeting, and we have the ability, frankly, we need that flexibility because things change from one year to the next, to transfer from one line to the next. Revolving accounts are individual accounts set up for specific programs. Revenues come in, usually through fees, and then those revenues are used to pay expenditures specific to those programs, not for anything else. As I said, the source are fees and donations. We have two different categories. We have those that are independent of the general fund completely. Food services and community programs are what we would refer to as enterprise funds, similar to the water department, completely self-sufficient. And then there are others that are in conjunction with the general fund, such as transportation, athletics, and the preschool, where those revenues that are generated from the fees or tuition pay for expenses, but not all the expenses. Expenses are also paid out of the general fund for those. We have grants, they supplement the general fund. We have federal and state grants governed by very strict rules and much more restrictive in making changes once the budget has been approved. Once they are approved, and they don't get approved until you actually submit a plan explaining exactly how you're going to spend that money, and if you need to change it, you need to get approval before you can, and it's through an amendment process. They include our special education grants, Title I, and some professional development grants.
And we also have a very large, significant grant for our nurses.
Is kindergarten included in that as well?
Yeah, you'll see the
Okay,
breakdown
all right.
of these. Yep.
I'm just trying to process buckets.
Circuit breaker we've heard about. It's the reimbursement for special education expenses from the previous year. And basically, the easiest thing to think about is 4 times. When we talk about that state average for the per pupil amount, you multiply that by 4. We are responsible for an expense for any student up to that amount. Anything over that, if they qualify for special education, if it's for special education expenses, is then eligible for reimbursement up to a maximum of 75%. That was what the intent was when the program was put in place. I think the first year it was at 75%, and it's been down as low as 40%, but the last 3 or 4 years it's been at about 72%. So it's been closer.
And this is like out of replacement typically?
Usually, yeah. Usually if we have an out-of-district placement, because the average cost of that is $65,000, that student has expenses that are eligible for reimbursement. Not too many students actually qualify who aren't out of district.
We maybe have one.
Right. Yep. Indirect expenses is a very large amount. Those are not included in the operating budget, and this is where we talk about the apples to apples and orange to oranges, because we might look at a district that's comparable in size, but their budget is $57 million and ours is $45 million. And people say, what's going on over there. It could be that they have some indirect expenses that are included in their operating budget, such as health insurance costs. What the information you looked at earlier does is puts everything into the pool and then comes up with the per pupil amount. So it's truly apples to apples when you see that. It again is funded through local taxes, and it includes employee benefits, borrowing costs, insurances, and then there are services that we have done by other departments that we have to determine what that cost was and report it to the state in our end-of-year report. So we assign a percentage to the finance functions that the town performs for us. We assign a cost for snow removal and things like that. And then the shared expenses of those two consolidated accounts, they're similar to the general fund in how they're funded and operate. And they include technology and facilities. And they provide services that you can see some unique services to the school department, but there are also shared, such as the network in IT. So here's the breakdown for FY15, and as Jen was saying, the information you saw, the state only has it for FY14 complete. We have FY15 because we've done our end-of-year report, but now what is happening is they're going around and doing all the audits on the FY15 end-of-year reports. And then once they've completed those, they can generate the FY15 information. But obviously we have ours, and that's what's here. So we spent out of the general fund $42.7 million, and we received in circuit breaker funds $1.45 for a total of $44,156,000. Total.
Can I ask you a quick question? So
Yep.
last year on circuit breaker, were we, I forget the term for it, but there's like when we crossed kind of.
We came so close,
we came
but
close,
we
but we
didn't,
just missed it.
didn't
right?
quite make it.
Okay.
We
all
were
right.
within, like
I'm just-
maybe $10,000
Yeah.
of getting there, where we would have qualified for 25%
More.
reimbursement for those. Right.
Right.
Beyond
okay.
that one.
Beyond our usual
Okay.
reimbursement. Right. So here are the grants. You mentioned kindergarten grant down near the bottom there. It's still, we have it this year. We'll see what happens. But the big ones are the special education grant at $1.1 million, the Title I grant at $316, and then you can see the health one at $86,100.
What is the 94-142 grant? When you say special, what is that?
Mhm.
What is it?
That's
The
the-
240 grant that
Right.
it pays for a number of things, a lot of positions, mainly positions.
That's an annual renewable, or?
Yes,
Yes.
Is that a state grant?
yes.
Correct. And then we go into revolving accounts, and we're all familiar with these. The big ones being the two independent ones we talked about, community programs and school lunch program down the bottom there. Athletics is at $337,000. Preschool, custodial overtime, that's the money we receive for the custodians covering events and especially booster events. Transportation is another big one. And then some smaller ones.
So in past, we've reviewed these to see if we need to adjust fees and/or move buses in and out of the revolving accounts?
Right.
Is that something we'll get to, or?
We don't see any fees needing to change this year. But we do following the operating budget process, we come forward with the revolving accounts, because they do need to be
Yeah.
approved by the school department, school committee, including any changes in fees.
Okay, so no lunch fee changes, no athletic fee changes, we're flat?
Correct.
Okay, and what about moving certain services out of the operations budget? Are we at the right school bus allocation?
Yeah, that would, I don't anticipate it, but that would be based on if for some reason ridership had really increased.
Yeah.
Then we would probably make it, because those revenues would be coming in more than we had anticipated as well, that you could probably move an additional bus if you need to add one into the revolving.
Okay, so we're gonna follow forward the current model of where, how we're splitting across the op budget. And the
It certainly looks that way right
Okay.
now. Yep.
What's the miscellaneous?
There's really small, they add up, but it could be the library book fund, if return books, well, we don't even have that one anymore. But there's just, I can make a list of the miscellaneous. I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Okay.
Like
But-
textbook replacement for kids.
Textbook, that's what I was trying to think of, yeah.
Okay.
If a textbook's lost,
And the money comes in. Indirect administrative support, that's what we were talking about regarding shared services, operations and maintenance, expenditures, extraordinary maintenance, retirement contributions. The big ones, obviously, are insurance for active and retired employees, long-term debt service construction and interest on that, and then tuition to charter schools fluctuates depending on enrollment, and regional school assessment as well.
So when in one more year, one more budget year, when those debt exclusions are now complete, what does the lines go away? The 1.9 and the 4?
If we don't add something, yes, they will go down. They go down as that gets removed from
2.3 million.
the payment schedule. Yep. Well, if that full amount is.
Well,
Is that-
there's only, as far as I know, there's only 2 more debt exclusion overrides that would comprise that amount. High school and something, I forget what.
Well, a long-term debt service construction and interest includes not only that, but it also includes any capital project that we have borrowed for.
Okay.
What is school choice tuition?
I'm sorry.
School choice tuition? I thought we didn't have school choice.
Yeah, it's not that. That's what it's called, or that's how it's categorized. I can find out what that is. It's a very, very small amount, but it's certainly not the program you're referring to.
How many kids do we send to charters right now?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head.
Probably 5 or 6.
I know that there are different categories. We have tech schools that we don't have the programs, and so they'll go to a
Essex,
school.
Essex.
Why would that
Isn't
be?
that regional school assessment?
Why would that be in charter schools? I'd be curious to know how many students we send to charter schools and what charter schools we're
We
sending.
could certainly find out. I can
Yep.
give you an example. If a parent applies to go to the Montessori Charter School in Newburyport, and they are picked in the lottery and they go, they take a certain amount per pupil from us.
Right.
And happens pretty much automatically.
Yeah, it does. But it's a sliding.
Yeah,
Okay. I'd be curious to know how many kids we send to charters and what the name is.
we could do that. There's one in Haverhill, and I know that we have.
It's true in Lawrence, yeah.
Yeah.
So the regional school assessment, that's Aggie and Tech, correct?
Right.
Correct.
And that's going up.
It has gone up.
Best one.
Yep.
How much of that was tuition versus how much was more students making that as a choice?
It's more students.
Okay.
It's gone, and it fluctuates. There's been years where it was 4, and then went to 7, and back down to 4, and now I think we're around 7 again. So,
Okay.
but we'll get the numbers. But this number is quite a bit lower than it would have been because of the move to the GIC.
Yep.
Our costs really went down in insurance. And then consolidated is the last category. If you look at school-specific expenses, it's about $300,000 in IT, and then if you take the same share that we do with the budget of 6832 school in town, it's another $300,000, so about $600,000 out of IT, and then same with facilities comes to about $206,000, so a total of $810,000 in those two accounts.
But not in the operating budget.
That are not in the operating budget, correct. That would be if we didn't have those. And so when you add it all up, the direct expenditures come to $49 million, the indirect come to $12.2 for a total of $61,549. And what happens is, I wouldn't pretend to understand the formula they use to determine that per pupil spending, although we're going to do our best to understand it. We're going to be attending the class later in the month just for that reason. But what the state does is there are certain things they don't include in that formula that they don't feel should be for their reasons, but it's excluded for all districts. So it's a true apples to apples calculation when they do that per pupil spending. But that's the total amount spent in FY15 for North Andover education for all students.
Any questions?
I was just going to say, I mean, again, I really appreciate this, Mr. Miller, because for years, when we've looked at that roughly $2,000, gap that we have with some of our cohorts that are out there, at least how I've understood it and how I feel it's been presented was that those other towns, were somehow including things in that number. And so our number was lower because we didn't have all those indirect costs associated to that. So I think that this makes it, much clearer, at least from my perspective, in understanding exactly, that it really is, the 61.5 that's out there. So I appreciate the time that it took to dig into this.
And I'll say it's important to note that the intent is to get a true apples-to-apples comparison. So it is easy to fall into the trap that, well, they're not including this. If you just compare operating budgets, you'll come to that conclusion. But by doing this, and they audit the end-of-year reports every single year to ensure that all expenses have been counted properly.
And I think it would be really beneficial, and I know you said you're going to a class in probably February or so, to understand how that formula is calculated, because if there's an opportunity for something that other districts are counting, or I'm not sure necessarily that there is, but if even in understanding that and seeing the examples that are there, if we realize there's a gain, then I think that we should look to that.
Yeah, the raw math puts us around 13,000 per student. That's clearly not the story.
Right.
So, if we're going to continue to socialize closing this gap, it's important that we understand how that's calculated.
Right.
Yeah, I think a good maybe last slide would be showing those things that are excluded from the formula, so people could see that.
And I think the other thing we need to be aware of is that while this shows us all the money that we get, 61.5 to spend, we're really sort of mixing two kinds of money here. We really would take out I would take out about 3.2 million, which would be circuit breaker and grants, and say that's kind of like revenue to us. It's not what the town spends. It's 61.5 less 3.2. The town spends everything else. That's what education costs North Andover. Less those two amounts, because those are revenue to us, if you will. So, but it's still a big number, and it's not our budget. It's not 44 million or 45 million. It's a much larger number. So, and that's something we need to be aware of when we think about our budget, and always have. When we want to hire new staff, we say $55,000 for a new teacher. Well, it's that plus the overhead, right?
And just going back to what Mr. McDevitt was saying, going to these sessions and trying to better understand. It was at one of these sessions that I got the information that we could move to full-day kindergarten without it really costing extra money, and so it was. There are benefits to go into those.
If you understand the math, then certainly
there you go.
You can look for it. But, just based off that, there's probably about $5 million that they're subtracting off of that and how they calculate that. So,
right.
I don't know exactly where that comes in, but it's interesting.
Right, and like I said, I'll add that slide.
That'd be great.
That will show what they exclude.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Okay, so now we're going to transition. Joan, hello, welcome. We're going to talk about the related arts position at the middle school, which was another thing that you had asked about. So we're going to try to explain this to the best of our ability, knowing that middle school scheduling is complicated, but I think we've got it, but we'll see. So I'm going to click while you talk, Dr. McQuaid.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to introduce Andrea Liagos. She's on our chorus and just about everything teacher these days, sometimes I think. But I asked her to come, and she agreed to come because hopefully as we try to bring more clarity to our schedule and where we've been and where we hope to go, she can possibly bring a different perspective if needed. Because to mirror what Dr. Price said, we know it's complicated, and one of the reasons it is that we do actually operate on 3 different schedules. One is the academic, which we're not highlighting tonight, and the other 2 are our band schedule and a non-band schedule. So what we have up there right now is a band schedule, and currently we run our related arts schedule on a day 1 and day 2 schedule, and what that means is alternate day. And so from a student perspective, our band student will have RA1 and RA2 together of a double band block. And then the second day, they would have one of the RAs that are listed below that.
And by RA, you mean?
Related arts. Thank you for, oh, there we go, yes, she wants to.
Just to be
That is
clear.
why she's here.
Just to be clear about what the band double block is for, the first half is instructional by instrument type, and then the last block is for full band rehearsal. So it's not just like, hey, flutes, we're all going to play together. It's flutes and clarinets for one block, and then the rest is combined rehearsal. So that's the purpose of the double block.
Okay.
How many students are in that?
That is,
That
information I don't know. I don't
Dig
know.
out
Do you
if
have
we
that
need to.
information?
Yeah, it might take me a while to dig out. So do you want me to look at that?
No, just keep going and then we can come back.
Keep going? Okay. All right, so providing that, if it works out that we get our teacher, the French-German teacher, after what our band would look like is that, well, this is an interesting sidebar, which I'm going to tell you in a minute. When we get the French and German teacher, all of our band students would have the double block right now, this we have now, and then they would have health, French, and then Spanish, as all of them would get. And then they would choose 3 out of the 4 that are listed there: facts, art, PE, and digital literacy. Currently, we have all of our band students taking digital literacy, and I would probably propose that we work it out scheduling that they all take that, because I know that was important last year. It was a very successful class. However, what was very interesting this evening right before I came over, I went to talk to my 2 band directors. They have a concert tonight to see how it's going and stuff. And they were, yes they do, and they had seen the slide and they were already reworking what we should be talking about next year, what's best for all of our kids. So they actually were discussing the possibility of having for our 6th and 7th graders next year, if we were to get the French-German teacher, to basically reduce their band period to 1 period, recognizing that 2 periods is a lot, especially for our 6th graders, and that period would become very instructional, and then periodically when needed we would put them together as a band for performance, like Andrea already described. So I thought that was very exciting, and that was dependent on whether the French-German teacher came on board, because this is the most related arts teachers we've ever had, so it's pretty exciting to start rethinking. And I just wanted to interject too that this is a nice opportunity for us to really look at change. I know last year we looked a little bit at should we restructure related arts, what that might look like, and as our enrollment, it appears to be going down a little bit. Our largest bubble class now is in 7th, and Jen, you can probably go to the next one now, to our non-band. But when that class gets to 8th, our class size is going down a little bit more enrollment-wise to about 360, which really impacts related arts. Our current 7th now is at 415, so it makes a big difference.
Coming your way, Dr. Scazzarella.
I know, really, huh?
What is FACS? Family and Consumer Sciences.
All right, so do you want to describe your world, or do you want me to? This is your
Well, I live it. So if you are a student that is on a non-band track, you can see basically from this slide you have a taste of everything versus a band student that has more music. But the main difference is that the chorus track is not a full year program. You get a trimester of chorus versus a full year of band. So that's where the trade-off happens. And most of the time, if you're a chorus kid, you're going to stay in chorus from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Every once in a while, we have a band kid decide they were just not into it and pull out. And on a rare occasion, I guess we see the opposite happen. But the main difference is if you're on the chorus track, you're getting every single related art. So how it works is, for example, a 6th grader on day 1 has family and consumer sciences, and then they have chorus. On day 2, they'll have acting and maybe fitness, and they do that for the entire first trimester. Second trimester, they're getting all new related arts. So they're getting 4 related arts at a time versus band, who's getting 3.
And so the idea here is that we have 12 currently.
Right.
Yes.
And then if we change,
add to it.
cultural linguistics would go, because we would be replacing that with Spanish.
Yeah.
and we'll talk in a moment about this decision, but grade level would disappear.
Yeah.
And we would be replacing that with French and German.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the same, would that be an option? That wouldn't be that the students would be doing French, German, and Spanish at the same time?
2 separate classes.
2 separate classes.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting, particularly omitting grade level. I know we've talked about that for a lot.
So that's the next
that's why.
slide.
Next slide, yep.
Whoops, sorry, went too fast. So as we discussed, we're putting this as a decision that we would have to make, whether to eliminate grade level or keep grade level. You want me to do this since I
Go for
kind
it.
of did some of this analysis? If we eliminate grade level, we maintain related arts class sizes at an average of 27.9 for next year, with a small reduction if the students only take 3 out of 4 in band, but that would go away if we
We do that.
that's a negative. If we keep grade level, we can reduce class sizes by about 2.3. So that's on average. If we eliminate grade level, one positive is that all students are given access to 12 out of 12 related arts classes. And there's additional time for teachers to collaborate, because currently grade level is staffed by teachers as a duty, so there's more time for them to collaborate. If we keep grade level in 6th and 7th grade, students are only going to be given access to 11 out of 12 because as a result, they would have grade level and then we would have 11 other options for them. And so kids wouldn't get everything. They'd miss one. And only way you reduce class size, because we're adding a singleton, is to have kids only get 11 out of 12. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And do they get to pick that? Is that
So
assigned?
that would be assigned,
Assigned.
just because of the logistics of that.
Schedule like this night.
And then, again, teachers, and another negative is that teachers' duties or additional collaboration time are used to staff grade level during this time. So that's currently what it is, but just wanted to put it on it. Our recommendation is for 6th and 7th grade is to eliminate grade level at 6th and 7th grade. We think logistically this is the better way to go. The challenge is we're not going to impact class size much, if any. 8th grade's a different ball of wax. 8th grade, if we eliminate, now remember we have a very large 7th grade, so I've done this on next year's projected 7th grade. We have a bubble class in 7th grade. If we eliminate grade level, the average related arts class for next year's 8th grade would be 28.3. Just seems
There's only one class out of 6.
that would be the average.
Yeah.
All of them
Some
would
may be higher.
Yeah. And there would be no impact on course offerings, as additional 8th grade related arts class would actually now be would be a doubleton, which is the world cultures class, because in 8th grade they already have a language. So what we are going to be doing is the French German teacher for 8th grade would be teaching a world cultures class similar to the Spanish teacher. So we're not developing a new course. We're just having more teachers teach the same course, which often we like to do in the related arts. Is when you have only one teacher teaching it, it's hard to schedule. When you have 2 teachers, it's a lot easier to schedule, and you can keep class sizes down. If we keep grade level, the average related art class for next year would be 25.9. So that's a significant difference, in my opinion. Not that the other one isn't. And then there would be no impact on course offerings, because kids would, it's a doubleton. So our actual recommendation for next year is to keep grade level at the 8th grade. So eliminate it in 6th and 7th, and then impact class size in 8th, mostly because the size of the class is so large.
So once that bubble class makes it through, could we eliminate it?
Yeah, so we could, and the other thing is we may be making a recommendation in next year's budget to add yet an additional related arts teacher, which would allow us to do both. So our decision is, we've talked a lot about this, our recommendation is 6th and 7th, eliminate it, keep it in 8th grade. So
If we could just add one more thing, Jen, too, that I think is important when we look at the averages, because what we're trying to do with the model that Chris and Matt are working on right now, actually, and my 2 band teachers prior to their concert, was some of our correct classes, when we don't look at averages, look at actually what's happening, are like this. Andrea, for example, has classes of 40 because of the amount of kids taking chorus and depending on the trimester. So as we start to look at keeping our tracks more aligned, and this would help, especially with obviously with the new teacher, that we would hope to bring. And what Chris was saying to me today, that he had some of your classes down to in the low 30s.
Everything would level out to about 32.
So it would make a huge difference across the whole related arts department to bring this kind of more into an even keel, which would be very significant, I
Just
think. Yeah.
while we're here, this is probably the most significant proposal I've seen in a few years. This is great. Outstanding. Great proposal.
So I have a question about the 8th grade. It says 2 sections of world cultures. So
So there are 2 sections of art, Art 1 and Art 2, and you don't have to, Art 1 is not a prerequisite for Art 2. We're just kind of giving them section names to keep things easy. And each one covers a certain content. So I think that would be the same situation for the world cultures. It would sort of be like World Cultures 1, World Cultures 2. They operate as separate entities.
I don't know, what are they? What is world cultures? So
World
we're doing
cultures is-
language, so we're not
yeah.
doing more language?
So the world cultures is
No,
what
the
we have
language
last
would
year.
still be taught in 8th grade, language is a core academic. It's not a related art. So so that's the difference. So we wouldn't be then having a related art that is the same as a core academic. But we've developed, which I'll let her speak about, obviously, a world cultures class, which is a great class that kids are pretty excited about. So
Yeah, we just started developing that class last year, and what our 8th grade World Cultures class has evolved into is student-driven. Quite a bit of the curriculum. They did a lot with the help of their teacher, Kim Crowell. They developed a lot of based what their own interests were, and they did a lot of different world culture stuff. I actually have our curriculum with me.
They do sign language, they do blue zones.
Right here.
they do a lot of current events.
It's really, they love
they create
it.
their own, discover the blue zones. They do a lot with sign language. They learned about 100 signs, plus they're gaining their understanding of, obviously, the deaf culture. They did a whole project on the blue zones, and then they moved into some of her background with the Aztec and Mayan calendar. And then what I envision with the additional teachers, that curriculum work would happen with Kim, and then there would be this class for 8th grade, and then they would expand on those key ideas. So like as Andrea said, they would work independently each other like our current art class does. For example, a student may go to ceramics, which is Art 1. I have that. I don't have it in here somewhere. And then they may go to painting, which is Art 2, in the same grade level, but it's a broad expansion of art.
I just want to clarify one thing,
Yeah.
just a reminder. In 6th grade, just because we haven't talked about core academics, there's 4 core academic classrooms. In 5th grade, there's the 4 plus applied math and science. It said 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, that 5th is the language. So that's why this would be there. Okay?
So first, Andrew, the work that you do in creating the continuity onto the high school, I think Dr. Scazzarella and I can both recognize that that's been phenomenal. Same for what Mr. Innes and Mr. Nelson have done for the music programs going into the high school. Do you see impact that this will create in that area?
I do. I think even if you just go back to the slide of what a band student gets, non-band kids, and then you see what the chorus students get, you can see as a parent a very drastic difference. And I think that even just in talking with Matt and Chris today about reducing down to that single block, it opens up so many more doors for the students, and I think we will entice more students to participate in a full-year band program, and that helps my entire department maintain even numbers, and it just makes things so much easier in general. And I think we're really excited about having additional foreign language within our department as well. And I know the kids would be really excited about it.
That was
Yes.
one of the concerns up front was that if you choose band, you don't get that, that RA.
So next
Right.
would be 1 section, not double section?
That's very
6 and
preliminary,
7 is what we're going to try.
We're thinking about it.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to
Yes.
think. Yep.
As a non-middle school person, I'm just trying to.
It's very
it's
complex.
complicated.
It's so hard. Yeah.
I can tell you, my oldest is in 6th grade now, and for a number of him and for him and a number of his friends, I mean, taking 2 classes for band was
Too
they were
much.
done. There was no way that they were going to do that. So I really am encouraged by, not that I think that we're diminishing anything with the band, but I think the opportunities that are there, and the core pieces that I think are offered in place of that second band period, I think is very nice and very creative, and I'm definitely supportive of that.
So I guess the last question I have is, the proposal sounds reasonable. When and how will we make the decision?
My sense is that basically we're proposing what we would do here. It's just part of my proposal, it's part of the budget proposal, I would suppose.
So what we're hearing here is a commitment to do this as
Yeah, so the idea would be to eliminate grade level in the 6th and 7th grade.
And keep it in 8th.
And then how that actually plays out is going to be an implementation issue. But that's the proposal. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, frankly.
But the goal is to put the French and German, excuse me, as the targeted curricular change.
Yes.
And that's not going to become
No.
another.
Right. I think the only thing that we are unsure of, as I've talked about extensively, is whether it would be French and German or French. It's really about hiring the right person and
candidate.
deciding what makes sense. That would be the only nuance to that decision.
Okay.
So for a 6th and 7th grade teacher right now who is core, they are currently teaching 4 classes?
5 and 7th and 8th. And then 6th grade, they teach 4. But I know being a 6th grade parent, both of you will see on their schedule extended academics. And what that, in 6th grade, and what that class is on paper, it shows a period.
Right.
But what the 6th grade teachers do, and which we encourage, is to have some flexibility with their time. So depending on what's going on, they may extend their classes to 4-hour-long classes, just to giving kids more instructional time right there in the classroom.
Okay.
Or depending on what else is going on, they may schedule a shorter time, and it's called extended academics, where they may reshuffle and that kind of thing.
So it's sort of like a flex time.
Kind of, yeah, and depending on the team, as you know, we implemented the 4-person teams this year, and that's allowed them to also, if they need to have some team time or for whatever reason, they flex that time around a little bit.
We're making no proposal to change that.
And I would say that, I think my daughter mentioned today, math was extended in 6th grade for her. I mean, she really enjoys that piece. She doesn't like that I'm missing the concert tonight.
Hopefully it's being recorded for you.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
We're now going to talk about the TIP program. Leanne Carbone is here. We have some nice pictures of our new TIP room. Thank you to Leanne and to Gilly.
That middle one there is our new adjustment council working with 2 students in the expanded TIP room. So right now, there are 7 students in the TIP program. 5 of the students are included most of the day, some being out of the room only 5% of the day. The most this past week, the inclusion TIP students were out was 33%. So they're in the classroom most of the day. What this new room and this new schedule allows is for 2 other students who were candidates for either a 45-day placement or a 45-day assessment or a placement because they were really struggling, could not be included in the classroom as much as a typical student. They needed that time to process, to be in a different space, to get some counseling. So this new space allows them to spend a greater part of their day in a self-contained model, but they're included as much as they can be. So it kind of depends. This past week, one of them was included. One of them was out about 80%, so they were included 20% of the day. The other one, 93%, was, in a different setting and included just a small percent of the day. It varies by how they're doing that day. So this just gives us the flexibility to give kids what they need at that time.
Look how little they are. But I say that in that this is what I was talking about, wanting to keep these kids in district. Kids at this age deserve to be going to schools within
and
our
not be on the
district.
bus for an
I mean, look how little they are.
Each way,
Each way.
Yeah.
Each way, I get that.
So today we also had another little guy come in from an out-of-district placement who were in the process of transitioning to the TIP program. He's been in a collaborative, and his mother very much would like to see him in his neighborhood school. She came to visit last week with him, and he spent a day there today, and we're hoping to transition him over, as soon as possible.
That's good.
And in addition to that, we have 2 other little guys that we're looking at right now as possibilities to see if they can, in the near future, maybe transition back to us.
So are these, I'm sorry, are these ABA type settings? Who is
No.
staffing these?
This is a therapeutic program, so this is social emotional counseling. It's not ABA. You know, it's a different type of.
Okay.
Can you tell
Yeah.
me what ABA is?
ABA is
What is
Applied
that?
behavior.
it's behavior. It's applied behavior analysis, and it's usually conducted with a BCBA board certified. We talked about that last year. So and that's usually with more of an autistic population. This is a different approach altogether. So the fellow you can see right there is an adjustment counselor. And having him has allowed the teacher, Erin Marsh, the TIP teacher, to spend more time up in the classroom supporting those students who can be included, but need someone up there, you know, checking in on them, helping them out, overseeing the assistants who are working with the other students in other classrooms. So this has really allowed her to be out and about more, which really helps the students and helps the teachers, while the students that need to be more self-contained can get those services at the same time.
The guy you see is the one that you approved earlier this year.
So what is the capacity? We have 7, possibly 2 to 4 more. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're going to have to see how it goes. I mean, I think we can definitely handle the 7 that we have, and we could take on 2 more. And then after that, I think we have to see how much service, you know, I mean, we have the new student coming in, probably starting within a week or 2, and we'll need some time to see what his needs will be. It will depend on what grade levels they are, because, you know, you can't cover the kids in all different classrooms with one person. So it depends on the needs and the staffing, but certainly I'd say we could get up to 8, 9.
Are we seeing this more utilized by, let's say, K to 2, or is it really kind of all of that elementary level? When just
It's all, we have kids in all levels at this point. Some kindergarten, and up to the 5th grade.
Okay.
And then what's the transition program at the middle school? Is there, where do they go?
It's called the Flex program at the middle school. And right now, this is the only program that has a self-contained model like this. So the Flex program and the Teen program, which is at the high school, they're inclusive. So students usually come for maybe 1 period a day, or if they're having a tough time, they might get a pass to come to the classroom for a while. But the intention is not that they spend the whole day there, where this model allows us to allow students to spend most of the day there if that's what they need.
And without this program, both of the kids that you see right there would we be paying for out-of-district, either 45 days or full programs. I mean, that would have been what the North Andover Public Schools would have done with these 2 kids last year.
Right.
Plus transportation.
We did have one go out earlier this year. He's on a 45-day assessment right now because we did not have this program in place at the time. So he's the one we're looking at now, going into Observe, working with our consultant, Walter Lyons, to see if he may be a student that we can bring back.
It's great to be able to offer that to our students. It clearly is beneficial for them and for the family.
And that is really what the parents want, especially for kids this young.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. No pictures here. So right now we have 2 ETL positions we have 1 position at the middle school and 1 position at the high school. And we have 1 administrative position, Deb Waybright, who serves as an administrator that goes between the middle school and the high school. So the proposed plan is to eliminate the 2 ETL positions, one of whom is retiring, which would allow us to add 2 administrative assistants and an additional administrator. So right now, an ETL, at each level, spends all their time running meetings, but when they're not running meetings, they're doing an awful lot of paperwork because we have to meet the timelines of processing all of the paperwork. Having an administrative assistant at each level would allow them to take over some of that clerical work that really doesn't need an ETL to do. So we're going to go from 3 positions to 4, but we're going to save $10,000 by we're eliminating the 2 ETL positions, adding 1 administrator. We already have an administrator, Deb Waybright, and then we will have a secretarial or a clerical position at each of the schools to help process some of that paperwork.
So one of the questions I think we had was, can you describe the roles and responsibilities of the ETL?
Yeah, the ETLs basically run the meetings. So they're setting up the meetings, sending out invitations, facilitating the meetings, making sure that the IEPs get written. They review the IEPs, sign them, send them out, and keep all the timelines, in the frameworks.
And some of those responsibilities, they would be divvied up. Much of it, you can hear, would go to the administrative assistant.
Mm-hmm.
The special ed administrator would take on reviewing the IEPs and all of that, and dealing with initials, re-evals, and any contentious annuals. And then the special education teachers would actually run the annuals. So those responsibilities would be divvied up, hopefully in a way that it makes a little bit more sense in terms of not having an ETL be doing the clerical, not having an ETL have to do some of the administrative work. If an IEP comes in that is not up to snuff, it's a little hard for a colleague to go to a colleague. It's easier for an administrator to go to someone they supervise and evaluate. And in some cases at annuals, we have the special educator, because the special educator obviously is at all these meetings, and the ETL, and we really don't need both of them. So the idea here is more efficiency, more clarity of responsibility.
What's the caseload at the middle and the high school?
The caseload at the middle school is about 165. At the high school, it's about 185. Close
For the
to 190.
ETL.
For the ETL. For the ETL, yeah. So, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say about a third of the meetings each year, if you consider that every special ed student has to be reevaluated every 3 years, about a third of the meetings are going to be reevals. So the administrative position will be overseeing and facilitating those reevals, because that's really where you allocate the district resources. That's when you're taking a look at what the student needs and do we need to add services, and that's where major changes are usually made, so that the administrator would be at those meetings. The typical annual reviews, the liaisons know their parents for the most part and would be able to manage those meetings, but if they felt that they couldn't, there would be an administrator in the building who could facilitate the meeting with them.
That's like a meeting a week almost, probably.
For the teachers?
For the reevals, I mean.
Yeah, there's a lot, and there are quite a few initials as well, even at the high school level. It happens more than you think.
The current administrator is retiring, is that what you said?
The middle school.
Middle school
yeah.
ETLs.
So the current two ETLs, do they become the administrators or do they become the administrative assistants?
No, so one is retiring, and the other, we have spoken with her, as I was saying, with the process. She would get a special education position. She's compensated at the same level as a special education teacher. So she would have the ability to have a special education teacher. We actually have a retirement at the high school. Or she could apply for the administrative position, but the administrative position will be an extensive internal-external search for that position. So there is no guarantee on that.
No guarantee on that, okay. It's not the lateral transfer.
No. And the administrative assistants would be brand-new secretarial positions. Yeah.
And who do the administrators report to? To you or to the building?
Well, we'll have to talk about that.
So my vision for that is that they would report to Leanne as the primary, and that Joan and Carla would be the contributing evaluators.
So if,
And I'm just telling them that for the first time.
You said you didn't want to do that, right?
Yeah, well, but I think they nodded. I looked.
We were.
She's trained us well already.
We work well together.
So I'm just trying to figure out a little bit, if a family were to have a problem or a concern with, for example, how their IEP was being followed today, are they working more with the administrator, or are they going directly to the ETO? And in the future, would they then be going and kind of starting with the administrator and then kind of going up from there? I'm just trying to, you know what I'm trying to ask, like what that current state, the future state, kind of, me as a parent, who do I, because we're going to have to get this messaging out as well. I think there's a lot of families that don't necessarily know When I have an issue, where do I go? And then there's always the issue of, well, is it the classroom or is it related to the IEP, and how do I kind of figure out where to go?
Well, we actually send a flow chart home at the beginning of the year to all parents of students on IEPs to help with that. But, you know, if it was a question about an IEP, the first place you would go would be to the special ed teacher who is servicing that student.
Okay.
If it was just a general question or what, and if it couldn't be resolved there, I would assume it would go to, now the ETL.
Yep.
And then if it couldn't be answered there, it would go to Deb Wainwright as the administrator. Next year, if there's no ETL, I would assume it would first go to the special ed teacher if it's related to the IEP. If it's related to just a class, it would be referred to the classroom teacher like anyone else.
Yep.
But if it's related to the IEP and the services or the accommodations or anything like that, it would go to the special ed liaison or the special ed teacher. And if it couldn't be resolved at that level, then it would go to the administrator.
Good. And can I just ask this? So if there's a question or a concern about how that's being followed, is that then sitting with the administrator or the teacher or the core teacher as well? I mean, like, how, if it's not being, what the accommodations are, how does that, because now we're in between kind of special education and then, you know.
Then we would probably want to reconvene the team and meet with the special ed teacher and the teacher involved and work as a team to work that out.
Okay.
It always is kind of a team process with special ed because we're always crossing over. But if it's generally a classroom situation, we would refer it to the classroom teacher. But if it involves accommodations in the classroom and the student wasn't getting accommodations per their IEP, then special ed would certainly be involved.
Okay.
Okay. If there's nothing else.
We're gonna, Carla, yep. So I just basically, this is the exact same slide that we put in the executive budget summary, and we said that Carla would kind of explain this and then be here for any questions. Thank you for being here, by the way.
No problem. So, as you're all aware, last year was the first year at the high school without department heads. So we have the curriculum facilitators, and last year we were able to continue the work that we'd been doing for the previous 3 years because the schedule was done before the agreement was made of how the facilitators would go into effect and all of that. So we had already given the people who were going to be in those facilitated positions the same preparation period so that we could meet during the school day as well as after school. Previously, when they were department heads, we were meeting twice a week to work on our standards-based curriculum, work on our common assessments, develop our professional development programs for each of our collaboration days. They are my heart and soul of the leadership in the building. You know, we are a team, we work as a team, we make decisions as a team. I value all of their input. I oftentimes put things out, this is what I'm thinking, tell me what it looks like from the classroom perspective. And I believe that's really important for a principal to hear that, because I'm not in the classroom teaching, and I don't have students who rely on what's happening in that classroom. So that's how we worked last year. It worked pretty well. We were happy. And this year, unfortunately, we tried to make that piece work, and I can never have more than 2 people with the same prep period. So we're almost at a standstill as far as the work that we were doing for the previous 4 years. We're meeting after school in between the FCI meetings that are already scheduled for the whole district, and we try to fit that in. We've, prior to November, we tried to meet on occasion by covering some classes, but I have a hard time with that. Taking a teacher out of a classroom to come to a meeting with me, I'm not okay with that. So we've done the best we can. Each of the administrators, there are 4 of us, we each oversee varying departments in the building. I am the liaison for English, Foreign Language, and Social Studies, so I make appointments to meet with those curriculum facilitators at times that are good for them. Do you want to meet before school, after school, during a prep, during lunch, so that I can say, what are you planning for the next collaboration block? Let's talk about it. So we've had to start doing a lot of individual conversations instead of a team, and it's having an impact. So my FCIs themselves wanted to meet with Dr. Price and talk about what she saw as the future and what were the possibilities. And so they did do that. They worked through their own union representation, and I think Dr. Price did a really great job working with the union to get them to understand that the curriculum facilitator position is really not the same in every single level. That I cannot obviously be an expert in all of the many subject areas we have at the high school. I wish I could say I was, but I am not, and I don't have enough days left in my life to go learn all of the things that we offer in our building. I rely heavily on the people in those areas with expertise in the curriculum and the ability to go back and forth with their staff. So this proposal, as part of the superintendent's budget, with the agreement of the North Andover Teachers Association, allows the high school facilitators and the middle school too, to become called department coordinators. At the high school level, they're going to have one less class in the cases that we can make that work, and they will keep the stipend that they have been receiving for last year and this year. And you see from the middle school, they're going to go back to the original stipend that they were receiving for doing the same work that they've pretty much been doing for last year and this year. So they're, I think, happy. I think the facilitators came back from their meeting with the superintendent pretty upbeat and really happy that this was able to be worked out, because the people in my building, as well as I'm sure Joan's, are very dedicated to the forward momentum and the work that we've been doing, and it bothers them that they can't do a good job. It really, I know they expressed that.
I sure did.
That's their concern, is I can't do the job I think needs to be done because I don't have time for this, and it is a little bit more involved at our level. So the other piece of this is that as sort of a compromise, because I have a fine arts position and a wellness position as well at the high school, Dr. Price's proposal was to make that a unified position and leaving it up to the principal if I wanted to split it out. Or if I think you have the same option if you wanted to split it out. So that stipend would be $5,000 because it involves 2 departments, or it could be split out into 2 $2,500 stipends for being part of the team. And I know that my art and wellness people expressed to Dr. Price, they're treated as full members of the team. You know, I don't look at our elective program as secondary courses. They are graduation requirements that have to be met in those areas, and so they have full voice at the table, and I want them to continue in that capacity. So I think you're going to work on the memorandum of agreement with the Teachers Association, and I see this as a positive, us being able to get back on track and being able to go forward in the manner with which we were already previously working. We're very frustrated this year because a lot of our work is fractured. I have to sit down with Chet, Kelly, and Scott and say, so what's your department's working on? Do we need to do anything together? You know, we've really had a tough time gathering them all together. And for 3rd trimester, I think I have 4 of them with the same preparation period and 3 without. So it's still not a full group, even though we might try to meet.
And this will solve that problem?
This will help, because by freeing them up for a block, the first thing we'll do is put them free all the same block. You know, and then they'll have their prep period, and then they'll have their classes scheduled in. Now, I'm not going to be able to do that with.
if the young woman who's in the art position stays, it's Sarah Durkin. She's not teaching any less music classes. And she doesn't want to teach any less music classes. Yeah, well, we have 160 students in the chorus. She can't give up any classes. So we will schedule around her preparation period so that she can still be part of the group. And the same would be true of the wellness program. If I can free the person up on occasion, I will. If not, we'll put their prep periods in first and then schedule the rest of this around that. So
I'm sorry, when you're talking about leading and planning, are you talking about the department coordinators of all the different subject areas meeting together? Is that, okay.
Yeah, we've not been able to do that in any regularity at all. And it makes us very disjointed with what we're trying to do.
I would say as a former high school principal, the meeting with my department heads was probably the most important meeting of my week.
Yeah.
No, I was just trying to figure out who was meeting.
And it's a large school.
So I have two quick questions. One, can you describe what, if any, this will have in the class size that these department leads will be coming from?
It's going to impact class size, but I think in a minimal manner. Each of these people, a single class that they have is between 24 and 27 conservatively. I don't have many classes that are at 30. I have a few, not many. So you take those 24 students and they then spread out amongst the other teachers. So people might get 2 more students, but not necessarily all in one block either. You know, the other people that are teaching have multiple sections of these courses. So it will have a bit of an impact, but it's not going to cause us to need another teacher. I mean, we did it last year, and the growth in the school is about the same. This year, we're about the same size, really, and that class isn't here yet. I have another year to go before the 400, another 400
But you can hear the
rolls in.
rumble of the feet.
Yeah, so they're coming. When they get there, we'll have 3 classes either at 4 or pretty close. We'll be the biggest we're going to be when they walk in as freshmen, because I'll have 3 of them in the building.
Yeah.
She's previewing a budget need for
Yeah,
next
you
year.
know.
Just-
Yeah, foreshadow. Thank you.
Just a little hint. Second?
The other question, actually, this is partially enabled by eliminating the FCI at the special ed. Can you describe what service, if any, we're going to be losing as a result of that? Or what they were doing that someone else will have to do?
Well, the administrators in those buildings will take over those positions.
Yeah, I would expect the administrator to be part of my leadership team, and be the curriculum facilitator for special education sits at the table and does the work that we're all doing. Doesn't run that's the ETL, does the meetings and things, but my expectation would be that the special education administrator at North Andover High School is now part of the leadership team.
So that's hand in glove with the prior.
And I invite the person that's 6 to 12, she comes, every now and then. She's got a big load, so she does participate when she can, but she's really important too to the decisions that we make around coursework and
good, thank you.
Professional development.
Can you, the United Arts position, so what would be Unified Arts? Tired.
It's a movie studio, right?
Yeah.
United Arts, yep.
Can you just, what would fall under that?
That is my art department, my music department, so that's 6 people.
Okay.
And then the wellness department is 5 teachers. So that would be, if I put it all under one person, that would be 11 people. I'm probably going to keep them separate, because in the high school, I'm not sure the wellness people and the fine arts people are necessarily talking the same talk. Although they're both very performance-based, one's very physical, and one is more, it's physical, but it's a creative physical, and there's a lot of rules that go along with what they're working on in any one of those art courses, where in wellness, they could be in a classroom, they could be demonstrating by, doing the game that they're working on, or watching a health video. So I'm not sure. I'm at least going to start out thinking they're separate. And if no one were interested, I might say, okay, what if we try putting them together?
And Joan, do you want to talk about it at the middle school? Because it's basically the related arts department at the middle school.
Unified Arts, actually, it's Chris Nelson. He's our Unified Arts, Related Arts, and actually we adopted that model of one person overseeing this year, and it works great. They all have a common planning time. They have worked very well together for years, and so what Chris has done as their facilitator, and actually, Carla, I should take the opportunity to tell you this, he would like to do a 6 through 12 meeting, actually K through 12, with, and Chris is orchestrating this right now, actually, on the 27th, to do a K through 12 with art and music discussion. But for us, for our typical just middle school or unified arts for that, and then all our relators we talked about, he facilitates their meetings. They have a common planning time, like I said, and they have a full meeting every Friday. An example, we have Family Night coming up in Spirit Week, February 10th. Those who have children in the middle school, they run that whole thing, and Chris would be facilitating that. That's one of those examples.
Anything else?
You're welcome.
Great.
So this change, I'm sorry, so you've already met with the union and they're okay with the potential of the high school of being a split position that's same teaching load but less stipend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. No, it's actually not less stipend because currently the FCIs for wellness and arts only get $1,500, so it's actually a $1,000 increase for them.
Okay.
So, yeah. And remember, this entire, other than the impact on class size at the high school, is a $9,000 increase. May I ask the permission of the school committee to allow these three wonderful women to go home if there's no further questions for them?
Thank you very much for being very informative.
Thanks.
And
Thanks, guys.
And good luck, Dr. Scazzarella.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much
Yes.
for coming. Very, very much appreciate your time. Mr. Gilligan.
Yes. The reading model outline, and what I really wanted to do is break down what it looks like this year. In terms of coaching, you guys have met our fabulous coaches, Jackie and Ann. Right now, they do 1 to 2 coaching cycles per week. If you look at the bottom, a coaching cycle is typically made up of 180 minutes, and it's comprised of planning, a pre-meeting, a lesson, a debrief, and a follow-up. And each coaching session involves approximately 3 cycles with that particular coach and teacher matched up. Okay?
Are these one-on-one breaks?
This is the coach
Yeah.
working with the particular teacher. Now, Ann and Jackie this year have done some work together with teachers, and I'll explain a little bit more how that works in a second. In terms of intervention, we have a total of 2.0 FTE reading teachers in the elementary schools right now, and we have 1 reading tutor. And what that allows us to do this year, it allows us to service 64 kids currently across all 5 elementary schools. So that's what we have right at this moment. By adding the additional 0.5 teacher, it allows us to do 2 things. One, in the coaching aspect, which they've done a fabulous job this year with the running records training, with the LLI work, the leveled literacy. It allows them to support 3 to 4 coaching cycles per week as the coaches, and that's really where we see the biggest impact because when you have limited intervention resources, even if you add more people to intervene, the biggest bang for your buck or the biggest impact that we can have on kids is the work that they do with teachers around that Tier 1 instruction in class. So that's going to allow them to do 3 to 4 a week. And on the intervention side, the additional 0.5, what it allows is it allows them to free the coaches up. It allows the additional person to pick up the 8 students from the coaches and then service an additional 8 to 12 students. So the 0.5 will service somewhere in the vicinity of 16 to 20 students throughout the course of a week.
So, and the coaches will they still be servicing students? Or
The coaches still will be servicing students, but on a lesser load of seeing students.
So what does that mean total? So
if you look, we're currently servicing... if we're servicing 64 students this year.
And that's including the coaches?
That's including the coaches.
Okay.
And we can add an additional 8 to 12, so we'd be looking at 74, between 78, even up to maybe the 80 number.
And that's across the 5 buildings?
That's across the 5 elementary schools. And this by no means includes any Title I support. Title I reading teachers.
I just want to remind you that we know we're going to look at a huge number of students, but these are for kids who need additional intervention, so it's not the full population of
Right.
students.
Yeah. And that's why the coaching's so important, because, I mean, I think as you've seen, I mean, we couldn't have hired two better people, not only for their knowledge base, but a coaching position, if anyone's been in the school, it takes a real skill set, because you are teachers, veteran teachers, who have, 6 to 10 years, and new teachers. They're opening up their classroom for these folks to go in, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. And these folks have the right disposition. They're terrific with kids, and I think you've seen by their presentations with the data that they are on top of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and the last question that you asked was just the information for the model classroom by school. So I have given that to you by grade. I will say, just a quick update on the model classroom. We are on track to have demo classrooms in every school by February 1st. At the February 25th meeting, it is our plan to have a donation of about $12,000 from the various PTOs total to fund those demo classrooms. And we're all on board and ready to go on that.
Great.
So I just wanted to share this information with you. So it's all in your packet. And you can see, again, the biggest number is NAMS, which we've talked about a bunch. We've been very clear with everyone that our expectation is the $60,000 out of the CIP, that we believe that a good chunk of that will be going to support NAMS.
Great. So this presentation will be on the website as well?
Yeah, it's all up already.
It's all
up attached to the agenda.
Perfect.
So I know it's all going, can you just explain, because there's a lot of needs, so why would most of it be going to NAMS?
Because, having talked with everybody, NAMS has A, the largest number, and B, the lowest ability to raise the funds through their PTOs. Elementary school PTOs are much more able to raise the funds than the middle school. Middle school traditionally has a much lower budget. So the percentage, A, they have the biggest hill to climb, and B, they have the lowest budget from the PTOs.
Do they have the least technology? That's what they
Yes, and they have the least technology. So when I say the hill to climb, that means they have the
yeah.
least amount of technology.
I was at the Atkinson PTO meeting on Wednesday, and they said they bought into this completely because they felt the exact same way, that they could raise the money, A, and B, their kids are going to get to middle school in a couple of years anyways, and they understand the need there. So.
And the PTOs at the elementary schools, I've met with, I'm going to Atkinson next week, but I've gone to everyone, Atkinson, I've not gone to Atkinson Kittredge. I won't be going to Kittredge as their number's quite small.
Actually met this morning.
There they are, so they feel confident about the 2,500. But I've been with Sargent, I've been with Franklin, I've been with Thompson, and they have all demonstrated a strong feeling that they will be able to pay for a good chunk of it. And these numbers may have changed. This was the original. I see. Yeah, the numbers have changed.
We have to go the ceiling. We can't do ceilings.
Yes, so we've decided not to do ceilings. This is what we presented a while ago. These numbers have changed slightly, but not massively. They're changing. I mean, we walked two installers through Sargent and Franklin yesterday, so the numbers changed yesterday morning. I mean, this is close. Okay?
Great.
Very helpful.
Good. Thank you.
Great. So that's our presentation to you guys about what you had asked for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the remaining old business, we have, essentially, we need to revote the school calendar as we inadvertently missed Monday, January 2nd as a holiday next year.
And we apologize for that. We did not, it's a federal holiday. We don't really have a choice.
Yeah, so I would entertain a motion to accept the amended 2016-2017 school calendar as provided in the packet.
So moved. Second.
Yeah. They have figured it out.
Fight it out.
All right, so now
We're
just,
good.
again, brief discussion. This basically extends the school year to the 23rd of June. And Dr. Price, were there any other substantive changes other than
No,
adding the
that's it.
second?
It's palpable that it's a Friday. I'm glad it's not a Monday.
Yeah, there you go.
Great. Any other discussion?
So all in favor of accepting the 2016-2017 school calendar as amended and presented in this packet, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All abstained? Great, so that's 5-0. Thank you. On to new business. So new business is to review our performance report. And Mr. Limpert, you've spent a significant amount of time and effort on this. Would you care to walk us through it?
Sure. As I had mentioned when we talked about putting this on the agenda, we've been producing now for a number of years. This was started by Christopher Hodder when he was here, producing performance reports which describe the sort of the overall activities of the school department for the previous school year. Academics, finances, student achievement, programs, a number of things, which has always seemed to me to be a good thing, good information to present to the community in one place. It's one place you can go and see a whole lot of information about our school district and what it's been doing, particularly in the past year. As you can see, if you looked at the kind of the progression here of these performance reports, so-called, these have been getting leaner and more synoptic as we've gone along. And I would say the latest draft for the school year 14 is a good example of what I imagine I'd like to propose going forward, that we would be putting together each year as our performance report or annual report, whatever you want to call it, for the district. I think it's a good place for the community, parents, others to be able to go and look and say, you know, what did we do last year? Enrollment, academic performance, you know, where a lot of our graduating seniors are going to colleges, you know, just a lot of good information there that would be, I think, very difficult for people to pull together on their own, or would not even be available to them, to the public. So I'd like to respectfully suggest that the committee give some consideration to continuing this reporting process and decide what, if anything, they think the content should be, the format and content of the report, if they think it's a thing worth doing. And then we can begin to think about the process whereby we would go about putting this together annually. So that's...
Can I, as a new person, ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Who does this?
Well,
is this an additional responsibility for me and my staff, or is this actually a school committee report?
What I would respectfully suggest is that it's a shared responsibility, which is what it has been. It's a combination, some school committee input, but it's primarily, your staff. Right?
What I've heard is that it is an additional responsibility for me and my staff.
It is. That's correct. And I think it's, I don't feel badly about saying that, because I think it's a worthwhile thing to do, and we can't do, I couldn't, as a school committee person, I couldn't do it. I don't have access to the information, so I would need your and your staff's help to put it together. There certainly are places where we, the school committee, could provide some of the narrative for the report, write things, do things. That would be one of the possibilities, but I think this is a good collaborative opportunity for us collectively to present a good sort of group of information to our community about what we do and how we've done. So that would be.
And we did also attach that we have to submit something to the annual town report every year, so that is another requirement that is on. And so I just wanted us to see that additional.
Typically speaking, what we've done is we've tried to recycle that information. So we've used the narrative for that twice.
But you will see that they are quite different in terms of.
But they could be the same. They could be more similar.
Okay.
It just hasn't. We haven't done that because in the past the superintendent or superintendents took a sort of an independent approach to the town report, and we didn't get involved at all. It was new to us when we saw it in the town annual report ourselves.
So if you're saying involvement, I just really want to understand the impact on me and my staff. Is if this is really our report, we'd have to go through a number of public conversations about this. It would probably take at least 2 meetings, right, to think about. If this is a joint report, you need to be able to vet feedback, vet feedback. So My only apprehension, I think I agree with you, Mr. Limpert, that it's a good idea, is it is a significant commitment on behalf of the schools to do this, just in terms of time.
Understand.
And I think that that's just important as we make this decision.
Understand.
Was there an FY, did we do a 14 to 15 one last year? No?
You have the draft 14, and we haven't begun to put together 15.
This is the draft for the 13 or 14 year?
This was a school year ending 14, right?
So this has not been like published or?
No, that's still in draft form. So the last published one was 13, right, school year 13.
So 12, 13.
Okay, 12, 13, 13, 14 has not been released, so you're seeing a draft.
And last year, given the turnover of the superintendent, we didn't even move on.
Yeah, we didn't even get started.
There's
So.
two reports to that.
Yeah. Well, we have one here that's close. And, this would be a start on, 15 would be our model for changing the format, looking at the process,
So you're not asking us to do me to do last year's report, are you?
I'm not asking you anything yet.
No, but I'm saying, we would just, I would be doing a 15-16 school report. We might miss a year, right?
So let me propose that this came to be because we were going to evaluate, is this of value?
Right.
And then secondly, if the answer is yes, it's a value, then I think we got to have that thoughtful conversation of, okay, so what is it and how do we break that down?
Right.
So
where do we put this? The report?
So it goes on the website.
What's the hit rate?
We looked into that. We couldn't find it because it's a PDF. Bev has, other than from Mr. Limpert, has never gotten a call about it.
But I personally have received feedback that when communities are under consideration, it's very hard to get this information. I've had folks who move into town say, there's no way to find out what the AP offering was. And they're absolutely right.
We have made, Mr. McDevitt, we have made no effort to make the public aware that these reports even exist. So if they're very difficult to find on our website. I have to struggle to go find them when I look for them. So we haven't made any effort to publish the fact, advertise the fact that these exist and people could look at them.
Mm-hmm.
So the hit rate now would be insignificant because they're basically a hidden gem hidden on our website somewhere. This, I would hope, would be then advertised and presented more prominently on an annual basis after it's completed, so that the community would know about it and could go look at it, just like the town annual report we do with that.
So I'm wondering, is a lot of this information already on the website, on the different pages?
It's just not compiled together.
I don't think so. I think a lot of this is contextual to what's going on in the different schools and the different programming, and that changes, year by year.
I mean, you could probably get a good part of this if you spent a lot of time, mining our website. Yes, you could do that.
I'd say 60% may be mineable.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
I wonder, could there be some sort of compromise of putting together something on the website that had links to all this different information throughout the website?
I will say, just to add, I just want to add one thing to the mix. We produce we don't produce it. The state produces a report card for every single school, an accountability report that we have to post every year. So we have that historically going back, but that's a separate state report.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let me just, before we go into the how, let's at least have a conversation. Do we as a group feel that this is important? Is this something as part of our communication to our community and to potential residents who are auditioning where they want to move families to?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know that I've read them when I get them, but I don't know that I've ever referred back to them. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable. I don't know that I've had a need for them, but I also understand that maybe getting more current information or more frequent updates to information in the different buildings and the different departments, I don't know if that's something that's possible, would be more cumbersome or time-consuming, I don't know. But it seems like a lot of the information is already being put together, so
So, you know, it just, how challenged do we want to make the public to find the information? You can do it. It's a sniper.
So, just so that I understand so one of the things, as you guys know, and we'll talk more about that, is my goal has been to really increase communication. So we now have a newsletter, and there's a lot of other ways. I mean, I've gotten a number of emails recently that people have felt that the communication has been enhanced. So if you are in the North Andover Public Schools, I think folks feel that there's a lot of ways to get this information, sharing all of this. I wonder if the goal, Mr. Gross, you're talking about perspective. To me, that's not an annual report. That's a district profile that we create that we would update annually, but we'd not have this level of kind of a 1 or 2 page district profile that had links to the APs, that had, you know, and if you're a prospective person, that's a different, to me, a different thing than this. And I think Mr. Limpett would agree. If we're doing a performance report, there's some reflection on where we're performing and not performing. And this is what your idea is, more of a district, you know,
District at a glance.
District at a glance or something like that. This is a different animal, because I would see that each year we would sort of be starting over. With a district at a glance, you would just be updating it with any changes. Is that?
I agree, and that's where I'm trying to get to, is do we think we need this compendia of the annual review, or do we feel that we have some information that we want to make readily available as a profile, to provide a profile of the district and where we are?
And we can link it.
So the thing that I would kind of look at this, and I really like the district profile piece. I mean, I think, you know, I'm just kind of envisioning, you know, a drop-down kind of or page within the web page where, you know, these are hyperlinks and we're able to drill through. My only thought is, you know, as we look, and I guess this is a report that you write, the annual report that's here, if there are things that we feel we need to expand upon. You know, I mean, this report, I think, is 3 or 4 years old now. I think it was when Dr. Hutchinson first started.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if, you know, this report kind of being, you know, front and center on the profile piece, and then a lot of the materials that are in what we were calling the annual report before, or performance report, are the hyperlinks kind of underneath, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to visualize it in my head. I mean, I'm viewing this as really the annual report, the State of the Union, you know, this is where we are. And then whether or not it's hyperlinks within this article or, you know, other sections that our AP offerings are, again, just, you know, a section that we're updating.
So what I'm hearing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is value in providing some consolidated view of our district, perhaps harmonizing with what we have to do to report to you know, our responsibilities to external communication under our policy, and then how we do that and what's the right balance. I think we can either solve offline with a proposal and whatnot. But I think the first thing that we came out of our objectives list was to decide if we're going to continue to remain silent on this or do something and provide something to the public. So I'd like to at least get to consensus on that, and then we can figure out how do we figure out the right balance of, that data is easy to get, and we can link out to other things versus, do a full regurgitation of what's been going on in the classrooms for the last year.
Well, the 4-page annual report that's at the back of this, that's something the superintendent produces by herself, by law, correct?
Well, the annual
report.
policy states that the annual report covering diversified activities of the school system and the administrator's recommendations for their improvement will be prepared by the superintendent and presented to the school committee.
Right. Now, is this MGL? Does every superintendent do this?
Is this the annual report that goes in the town warrant?
No, it doesn't appear that way. This appears that you're supposed to send to the. I mean, I'm just reading what you're reading.
Yeah. So, Mr. Treese, this performance report is the closest thing we've ever had to that, satisfying that requirement.
Now, I just want to know what the legal requirement is, first of all. What are we legally supposed to do? Are we supposed to submit this annual report? Do we know?
I don't think we have to make it, we don't submit it, it's just made available.
It's made available.
It's made available.
And I think, doing it through the town is making it publicly available. But again, I would.
Yeah.
Well, my recommendation. That's what my thought. Thank you. I'm not one to make work for the sake of making work. I think I understand Dan's point. It's nice to have it all in one easy, PDF, so to speak. I would have to go through this in a little more detail because I think I made my point clear on MCAS, for example. I don't feel the need to get into a lot of these other things just for the sake of doing it. And a lot of these things probably could just be updated pretty easily on a year-to-year basis. Like, the first page, we're not going to be changing, what the town's all about or the schools are all about there. We'll have to change the photo, obviously. But, by and large, it's something I think that we could manage. But, again, I think I'd like to contemplate a little bit more and get a little, because I do agree it's going to fall mostly on the shoulders of the superintendent's office.
So back to your question, I just want to see it being not so much I still really see it kind of now being more of an either-or thing. So on the one hand, you could say, okay, let's say an online, web-based district snapshot with some hyperlinks that have some of this data, and it's updated annually. And then the question might be, online, would we have some narrative that would describe some reflective view of what the last year looked like, but online, not some published report. So there'd be sort of a simplified version of this without a lot of the pictures and stuff. And as Mr. Tracy points out, the stuff that we don't need to include because it's the same every year. The town is in the same location and it has the same.
I suppose more if calling the performance report is really the accurate title.
It probably isn't, and the only reason it's called that is because it was adopted from another town that called theirs a performance report. No other reason. So a lot of towns called this, a lot of school districts call this an annual report. But it could be called whatever you want. Again,
For me, it's just, what is our audience? If our audience is people new to the school system, contemplating the North Andover Public Schools, I'm not sure they're going to wade themselves through this report. I think a district at a glance is a better.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think they're not going to start with the history of the town. They just want to see what's in the schools, what's there. Coupled with this annual report. It seems, and I would ask you guys, that this is a requirement of mine to write for the town.
I believe there's an annual report submitted separate of this
for the town warrant.
Yeah.
Well, it's
not the performance report.
It's for the town annual report. So
Right.
the superintendent every year writes a piece.
Which we could have available on the website.
Yes, exactly.
Which would be the more reflective component.
Exactly.
So, and that sounds like the path of least resistance, right? I'm sorry.
I was just going to read out the law.
MGL, right?
Chapter 72, Section 4, reporting condition of the schools. The committee shall annually make a detailed report of the condition of the public schools containing such statements or suggestions relative thereto as it considers necessary or proper. It shall cause said report to be printed for the use of inhabitants in octavo, pamphlet form, or the size of the annual reports of the department. The superintendent of schools shall transmit 2 copies thereof to the commissioner on or before April 13th, and shall deposit 1 copy in the office of the town clerk.
These are similar to the reports that I have going back to 1856 in my office. There's an annual report that's been collected every single year since 1856 in North Andover, and they continue. My question was, Dr. Price, were you thinking about something similar like the high school profile that we have now with it's 4 pages with all the colleges, the AP scores?
Yes, we would link it to it, but it would be a district rather than just the high school.
Okay,
Right.
got it.
So could the annual report to meet that be whatever is submitted to the town?
Yes, and I would encourage that. Matter of fact, I think that would be the proposal maybe that we can move forward with.
And I think maybe the discussion going forward would be if we were to agree that it was like an online version of this, then what those hyperlinks would be. What are we going to link to, and what's the data?
So
how's that done? Right?
That's something that we need to do, right?
I think so.
No, I mean, I think it would be something that we would create and then have you review both of those.
But the point is that the information would already been created, so it should just minimize any.
Yeah, and I think it's the
load.
right thing to do for us, if someone's interested in our district, that they can come, or if anyone's talking about it, that they could just say, what does our district look like?
Yep. Okay, so let's think about that, and I don't think there's a vote required. I think it's just a matter of, we just need to schedule that.
The compromise would be that we would have the district snapshot for last year, right? Could we do that?
Well, the district snapshot wouldn't change year to year. It would be
No, but I mean,
district snapshot.
whatever the data would be that we would link to, we would have the links for last year, so that could be online, because we have the performance reports, but then last year would be just data.
Yeah, but I think
links.
the district report would be something we would update with current data all the time. So we would be using, for instance, last year's MCAS results. But I'm not going to put the 2014 MCAS results in. It would just be whatever is most up-to-date.
Right.
And last year's graduating class, not 14.
Yeah, it's got to be a living document, or it doesn't serve any purpose.
Okay.
Okay. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm fine.
Any
No,
other
I just, as long as the data is available in a place where people can easily get at it.
Once that page is done, I mean, that could just be archived and a new, right? Because whatever is posted for the end of the school year 16 could be archived. And
There will be a hard copy. There needs to be a hard copy generated and sent to the commissioner.
No, but I
So-
think that what Stan is getting at is that I'm not saying we recreate last year, but I'm just saying, like, for this year, you create a page, it's for the 15-16 school year, then those links could be archived, and then the new
Yeah,
updated
absolutely.
one,
They could
and
look
that
at
could
it
be available going
historically.
forward. So that would
Good.
allow people to look back.
They could take a look, and that's always been the issue, is it goes to town meeting, so the annual report, because principals help participate, it's always a year behind, because it's the year prior to, it's a September year, because the town meeting's in spring.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is add to our agenda before the April date that is called out in Mass General Law 72-4, a review of that report. And that will give us the time to work through what links, what doesn't link, and ideally you'll have the school profile available for the town warrant well before that. So the collateral should be all there.
And by that time, Dr. Price will have time to write her narrative for the annual report.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That'll be
works out
done.
perfectly.
So, Ms. McDevitt, what was the date that's required?
April 13th.
Okay, so we'll just add that to the agenda
Yeah, I mean, it's-
when it fits.
Having to do it for the town, and it's great to be able to do two things at once.
Yeah, I agree, and it sounds like it's a good work output, and it shouldn't be any additional work other than making sure the links are there.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'd like to move on, unless there's any other comment, to public comment for our public that remained.
Hi, Jean Willoughby, Raleigh Tavern Lane. My question is, in our last couple meetings, Leanne Carbone was talking about hiring a .5 AT specialist for the district, and I was just wondering how that is going. Like, I didn't see it in the budget.
So I can answer that. It's already in the budget, as I think the challenge has been we have been unable to get anyone for the position. But you'll also see in my executive budget summary that we have hired a consultant to look at our entire structure of special ed, and that if we can find a budget-neutral solution to increase that to a 1.0, we will do so. But the challenge here is we went out, we interviewed, we posted the position at the beginning of the year in August, and we couldn't find anyone at a 0.5. So we've been contracting that out, as you know.
Yeah.
So as we're looking at all of our contracted services as part of the special ed review, that will be part of it. We did not make that part of the budget process because our consultant will not be ready for a little bit longer. She's spending a lot of time looking at all the different aspects.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thanks.
I think it'd be really nice to be able to have someone in-house so that we can, have questions answered quickly and cross-train.
We absolutely agree. We just couldn't find anyone.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Thanks. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Great. Anything from the school committee? Entertain a motion? I'm sorry?
Robotics tournament Sunday.
Robotics tournament Sunday.
High
Excellent.
school, be there.
Thank you very much. Take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.